We're live. Okay. Let's see here. How do I get back? Okay.
Armored Core.
Yeah. We're live, baby. All right.
Testing my voice to see if I can hear myself. I can. Great.
Can you hear me? Is it around the same volume?
It is.
Dude, it's so hard to figure out sound settings on stream and Discord because like you can't really monitor yourself very well.
You know what you got Voicemeeter Banana, bro?
I'm aware of Voicemeeter Banana. I just have
You
not.
gotta fucking step it up, man.
Oh God.
Get your voice. I think you could probably route it all through Audacity. Oh, not Audacity. You could route it all through Audition, which is basically like Voicemeeter Banana. And
Maybe.
you output it.
But those
So you have all
those digital XLR cables, kind of cool. Like
Yeah.
it comes with one cable and then like you can buy more. That's their premium function.
Voicemeter.
Yeah,
I think if you have Audition, you can just do it
digital
from Audition.
XLR cables. They just come with it. Okay, well,
No, that's
maybe
just-
I'll look into it.
They just brand. They're just like branding like audio routing as digital XLR cables. You can do, or like if you do, you literally fucking do it in Ableton. You just
Have
like
we-
map sources to tracks, and they mix down to like an output.
Have we talked about climbing in here yet?
I
I don't think we have.
We have. But you haven't done a full episode on climbing yet.
Yeah. Watch out. Peep
That's for the-
peep my new climbing show with Justin Grote, dude. Climbing YouTube.
Hashtag climb bros.
Boulder
I'm ready.
Bros. Okay. You can introduce
I'll,
us
I would love to introduce it.
if you want to ping, and if
124,
you want to ping the
127.
channel. I don't know if you already did that.
I didn't. I got too distracted looking at your haircut.
Oh yeah, we're back to short again.
Game Club.
I just wanna stand here and watch me burn. All right. Oh, we gotta record also.
All right. You want to count down?
3, 2, 1, record.
Check. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
3. I guess I don't need to count myself down. I'm just gonna take a silence and do it. I'm gonna check my level real fast. Hello, everybody. Oh, I need to go down. Hello, everybody. Still a little hot. Hello, everybody. There we go. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bad End Podcast, episode 127. Each of those are prime numbers. Thank you for joining. I am the somewhat frequent, often co-host of the podcast, Kyle Cookstow, hosting this episode with the person who will never miss an episode, Joshua Calixto. Say hello to the listeners, Josh.
What's good, my G's? Have I ever missed an
And-
episode? I don't think I have.
I think you might have missed one in like the first year, maybe, because I
Yeah.
think that like Katie and I recorded, and we had to send you the files because you were out.
Okay, I think I remember.
So Mr. Perfect Attendance over here, goody two. Actually, dude, I when my sister graduated high school, they give like awards at the end of high school graduation.
Yeah.
There was someone in her graduating class that had never missed a single day of school ever,
Bro. Was the kind of
ever.
person who wore like a suit and tie to class? I wouldn't be
Uh,
surprised. It seems
Sort
like
of that energy,
same
but like
wheelhouse.
it's funny too because you missed zero school, and I think she got like a certificate, and it's like it's just collecting dust somewhere.
I
You
mean,
didn't miss
I'm surprised they
a
even keep
single
track of
day,
that.
a
Yeah.
single day.
I
Uh,
mean, what's more impressive that just means they never got sick, or they just came to school sick, which is like, don't do that.
which yeah.
Don't get
It's like
everybody
part
else
of it's
sick.
like
That's messed
what
up.
this award says is that you have negligent parents who send you to school when you're sick. I never
Yeah,
thought about that. That's actually a really good.
that's messed up.
That's really
I
messed
mean,
up.
post COVID, it's worse. But before COVID, everyone was just like, "Yeah, you're sick. So what?
No
You came to
one, no one
school."
got sick before COVID. Actually, that's the truth. I'm back on the podcast. It's been a minute. Josh, I was in Germany.
I saw, and I want to hear about your. I mean, because you were there for the popular. I want to say the biggest video game conference in the world.
Okay, yeah. So this is the weird thing. So I was in Germany for Gamescom,
Yes.
which like I think Gamescom has just zero surface area of knowledge in America, besides the past 3 years, 2 years, when Jeff Keighley has started doing the opening night live, which is sort of like a mini announcement show for Gamescom. Um, but like no one in America really cares about it or like even really understands what it is. Uh, and Josh, did you know that Gamescom is the biggest video game festival like in the world? I think is its claim to fame.
I
Let me
mean,
let me
that's what
check
I'm
it.
thinking. Like, because E3 is dead. So I mean,
E3's
and I
dead.
feel like that would have been its only competition. Tokyo Game Show is not really like a thing anymore, at least in the same way. Um, Nintendo Directs, like everything's kind of split into a bunch of different things. Really, only like the Game Awards now kind of feel like that.
Uh huh. Yeah, so it
But
says on Wikipedia that it is the world's largest gaming event. So I think
what metric are we
uh,
talking here?
just
Floor
number of
space,
visitors.
number
Oh,
of
measured by
visitors.
exhibition space and number of visitors.
Okay,
Well, in
interesting.
2018, it had 370,000. I think I saw that in 2023, it was 330,000, 320,000. So it went down because of COVID. But uh, it's still like by far the biggest games event.
Yeah, and I mean
Um,
when Papa Keely shows up, it's you're good. You're good to go.
yeah. I guess he started in 2019.
Hmm.
So yeah, so like it's a giant gaming festival. I went because I'm pitching sort of the next game I'm working on. Cantata is now out into the world, which is also doing that. Was what when you missed a few weeks ago. And I went to basically talk to publishers and all that stuff, but also just to kind of like be there. And it's like, I mean, it's sort of crazy. It's like it feels like what people imagine E3 was supposed to feel like, because the thing about the space, so I've been to E3, or like the old E3. I guess E3 doesn't exist anymore, but like E3 was largely is a big conference space in like LA, right? No, San Francisco?
No, it's LA.
No,
It's LA.
LA. Yeah, it's like a big conference space in LA. Um, and like Gamescom feels like it's like four times, five times that or something. And the thing about E3 has always been that E3 is like it's a lot of computers and like consoles to play stuff with like some digital, like some kind of physical installations. But if you go look at the pictures of Gamescom, it's like they're building out like insane stuff. Like when I was there, they had like rebuilt out like the pizza restaurant from Stranger Things and were like giving pizza out of it. There was like a football field size, like probably half a football field size thing that was literally like a giant like orc encampment for like the Warhammer RTS. Like it was insane. Um So it's like a huge sort of just gaming festival, basically. And more interesting than E3 is that it is feel there is like a sort of an exhibition-y like business kind of part of the conference floor plan, but largely it's just like for players and gamers. So it's just kind of like a little theme park of running around and like looking at stuff. And it was cool. And also like it's done in Germany. It's in Cologne or Cologne. And the city itself is just like really nice. Great weather. It's like right off a river. Um, you can like scooter everywhere or bike or whatever. Uh, and it was awesome. I had a really good time. And the crazy thing too was that I think I legitimately met zero people there that were from America.
Yeah,
Like
it doesn't
nobody I
have as
talked to
big
was
of a
from
name
America.
here, but it's huge.
It's giant. Like I was so surprised. Like not only sort of in the scale of it, because you see like pictures of Gamescom. Like I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, and you see these pictures of it, and what you don't realize is that like each of these pictures is from like a separate hall, and I think Gamescom it takes over like the whole conference center, and there's like 10 halls, and they are giant. So like yeah, it's like a huge games festival. And yeah, like all of Europe basically goes to it.
Did it
Uh,
feel like there was a place for this in 2023?
it feels like yes,
And did it feel
it's
like
one of
did it
those.
feel vital the way that, like, something like E3 did, or like Gamescom did 10 years ago?
I don't think it felt vital, but it's like where else are you going to get a life-size barracks replica of like a Warhammer RTS base? Like
Yeah.
that's sort of what I was thinking about a lot was like it feels like such a thing that's so gamery that there's like nothing else really like it on top of that. Like if you're like a gamer in America, like I've been to PAX and PAX is not like this. Like PAX is like a lot of individual booths, but this is like people are buying out giant spaces to do like giant bespoke physical installs. Like the farming simulator booth had like a legit giant fucking tractor. Um which I guess you could sort of do at something like PAX. But like there's just really big stuff that feels like very like there was a whole like Escape from Tarkov had a booth that was like a whole military barracks thing that had like real terrain and all this stuff. Like it's just sort of insane. And I think they call it like a festival for video games, and it really just feels like this thing that's like a direct celebration of video games.
As opposed to just
That's
like a
just like
trade show
fun.
straight up.
Yeah, like it's like yeah, they call it the heart of gaming. Yeah, it's like I guess it's technically a trade fair. They said it's Europe's leading trade fair for digital games culture, which I think is a probably fair representation of it. So in that way, it's like I don't know if you're like a gamer and you want to go feel excited about video games, like it is fun to be at, and there is like new stuff there. Like they were selling the Lorcana trading card game
Hmm.
before like Street Date. Like you could go play like Wo Long or the new like MiHoYo game was there, the like NNN or whatever. Like it is a place to do that thing that feels. It probably feels like what E3 felt like, a decade ago,
Yeah.
but is like much bigger. And I think like it really doesn't have a lot of the trade show vibe that you get from walking around to something like GDC. Like there is definitely that stuff, especially in the sort of corporate section of Gamescom. But that's like even though there's a lot of people that go to those booths, like so much of the space is dedicated to just like video game stuff. Where if you like video games, like it's a really cool place to go and just see video game stuff. Um, so yeah, I mean, I honestly like after going, I'm like, I want to go every year, just because it's like fun to walk
Wow.
around. The other thing is that like, I think that there's a sort of American bias towards like a lot of games publisher or games developers or whatever, like especially with stuff like GDC. But like, if you're a game developer, like every publisher that I knew of was at, I guess every European publisher I knew of was at Gamescom, and a lot of the American ones that I knew were also there. So like it was a pretty big business thing. Like legit just like meeting in hotel lobbies and all that same stuff that you know about if you do GDC, like a game developer. That was definitely happening at Gamescom too. Um,
Dude,
and yeah,
Bad End
it was no.
at Gamescom 2024.
No. So I think the thing about that is that what they do at Gamescom is that it's so much more focused on. Actually, this is one of my interesting takeaways about Gamescom. Sorry. I guess well, let me take a step back. They don't do stuff like what you're talking about, like if Bad End did a panel. Like that's just like not what Gamescom does. It's way more targeted at sort of bigger budget stuff, kind of spectacle. Bad End, PAX West, they would totally do that. We should totally do that. But one thing that was really interesting, like walking around, was like, so they have the halls are sort of split. Like there's kind of like 3 or 4 halls that are really big installs of like whatever spectacle thing. And then there's like one hall that is the Indie Arena booth, which if you're in America and you're a developer, you've probably heard about the Indie Arena booth, but it's always just been like 6 computers at PAX or something. Like it's a small thing. At Gamescom, it's like huge. And you're like, oh, this is why it matters, because it's just a giant, like, it feels way more like GDC, like IGF Arena or like indie stuff at PAX, or like something like Day of the Devs that's just like expanded out to be like 500 computers. But the thing that was really interesting about Gamescom was like walking around these really big halls and seeing stuff like Starfield and stuff like Wo Long and Warhammer, the MiHoYo stuff, all the big games. And then going to the Indie Arena booth, it's like really surprising that, you know, despite like the, I don't know, the indie tag being number one, like it's like the top tag on Steam, and us sort of living with now almost 2 decades of like the indie, like kind of indie really breaking in terms of games culture, breaking onto the scene in terms of games culture. Like how few of those things are represented in the big booths. It's like indie happened, but like Starfield still has the biggest booth 20 years later. You know, like Warhammer is still a giant presence. I guess Tarkov is like maybe the closest, but it was just surprising, like walking around all these big halls, and it's like, oh wow, Sony, Capcom, you know, Microsoft, Creative Assembly, like all the people who've been big for a long time still continue to be big. It's not like, you know, Super Meat Boy has a giant install or something,
Right.
or like any of the like indie, like Castle Crashers, like all these sort of games that even like something like Spelunky, right? Like there's no
I think it's
there's
just
no like
like
big presence of this
indie
stuff.
feels like pre AAA. You know, it's like that's where.
But it's had time, is what I'm saying. Like there's literally been almost 2 decades.
Yeah,
like,
but
it's
that's the
just
thing is
surprising
like
that like nothing. It's like nothing. No indie has like a giant booth, which is just really surprising. Not like, I mean, it makes sense, but it's like, you know, why is this?
because I feel like there's a point where it's like when you have a booth, then you're not indie. When you have that booth, then you're not indie. Like
Oh yeah,
if
yeah,
there was
totally,
an Among Us
totally.
booth,
What I'm saying is that like indie stuff that broke, you know, 15 years ago has now had 15 years to become a AAA thing, and there's like nothing. Nobody did it.
so you're talking
Like
about like the
nobody
first
did it.
crop, like yeah.
Even
Huh.
the second crop, like none of this stuff has booths anywhere near the sizes of these like giant studios and companies. And it's like, it's just surprising. Like your indie stuff is still big, people still buy it, but it's like just the scale of AAA success is so huge that I think
Yeah.
it's easy to forget that like most indies aren't actually doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Huh.
So yeah, I don't know. We could do a Bad End Gamescom meetup if you're in Germany. Listen to this podcast.
And a couple
next
episodes,
year.
some dispatches, you know? Maybe a little video feature.
I thought about doing a dispatch. That would have been fun. So yeah.
next year.
So I was at Gamescom. It was fun.
Yeah. It sounds like it.
I have one other thing I want to talk about before we get into talking about the title of this episode, which is Armored Core.
Yeah.
You want to hear it?
Yeah, of course.
I got such a backlog of of
No,
chatting.
please just let it all out.
I got a PS5, Josh.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have
Congrats.
a PS5?
I do not have a PS5.
Have you tried to get a PS5?
No. Once I get a
When you
job,
buy a PS5 right now in 2023, when did the PS5 come out? 2020, technically?
I want to say 2020.
Let's see. 2020. So buying a PS5 right now still feels like buying drugs. Like I went to a Best Buy and I was like, "You guys got any PS5s?" And the guy's like, "Hold on a second, let me go look in the back.
Guys got PS5.
Let me go. You guys." He's like, "Hold on."
Bro.
And he disappears behind the counter, comes back and goes, "Yeah, we got one. It's just a disc one though." And I was like, "Cool, can I buy it?" And he's like, "Yeah,
Come here. He's like, come here.
okay."
Come here.
It's weird. It's got like people they still don't stock them on shelves. Like I don't know if you've like been to a big box retailer. I think they stock Switches on like on the shelves at like Target or whatever, but they don't put PS5s and Xbox whatever they're called on the shelves. So they're all like inquire at the desk. So you get this sense of these things that are kind of like shadow consoles that just sort of exist around, but you have to ask to get them.
Yeah.
And they're expensive still, right? It's like $500-$600. I don't remember what it was. And
Probably
so it's
five.
very weird that like, 3 years on now, almost this, the PlayStation 5 still feels like this weird intangible contraband that like people don't really talk about. It's not really displayed anywhere. Like I'm not totally sure that if I went into a Best Buy and didn't know what a PS5 was, that I would know that I could buy a PS5 there. Because you go to the game section and like most games are still just for PS4. They do sell like some PS5 games, but like I always imagine like the tired parent going into the Best Buy to like buy the thing and like it's the same font. Like they're differentiated because the PS4s are blue and the PS5 is white, maybe like the title on like the little thing you
Yeah.
grab to get the game. It's like the sort of the surface area feeling like the PlayStation 5 is even a thing that exists is really weird.
I think this is like a
Um,
Best Buy thing because like I go to Costco and they just have the like the box full of like
do you want
the
6
pink
PS5s?
slips in there. Yeah. We sell them in bundles. You take your little. They got a little like shell wrap card. One PS5. You exchange
Yeah,
it
yeah,
at
like
the
the
front.
Toys R Us style thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it
Yeah.
comes with
So
like some game nobody fucking wants.
Astro's Playroom.
I heard that's
Um,
fun.
so I got a PS5. I was like looking at the list of exclusive PS5 games and it is getting diminishingly small. Like they're getting converted to PC games faster than they're releasing PS5 exclusives.
Yeah,
So
I've had
like
no problem. I've like really there's nothing on the PS5 where I'm like I need to get a PS like Final Fantasy 16 is the only thing and that's like I
I mean,
heard
so
it's
for a
kind of
while
mid, so
it was like Returnal.
and then
Um
that came out on Steam and I just played it
and
then.
it literally came out on Steam like a month ago.
Yeah.
Um I'm looking at this list. Astro's Playroom, Demon Souls remake, which I think would be cool, but like I don't know if that's a console seller.
Yeah.
The new Ratchet and Clank. Yeah, this list of PS5 exclusives on Games
The
Radar.
Ratchet and Clank's no longer an exclusive either. They just put
Oh yeah,
that
they came out on
Steam.
PC as well. Yeah, Final Fantasy 7 remake,
Nope. Not exclusive.
PS4 as well. These aren't even none of these are Ghostwire. Forspoken. That's on PC now, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like I got it and I was like, well, I guess there's nothing really exclusive. But I mean the thing though is like it looks fucking good. Like it runs well. Like so I got Returnal,
hmm
and I was playing that and I was like, yeah, this looks and feels really nice. Like the load times are great. It looks really pretty. Um Returnal so far seems like fine. This is like really old discourse now. This is like some 3-year-old discourse. I was sort of surprised though, like how much it sort of cribs from Rain World. Like the
Hmm.
monsters in Returnal are just like straight Rain World monsters, like like front glowing head thing.
Hmm.
Like they look literally like Rain World monsters, and the environment in general has got this sort of like dilapidated city Geigery thing that
Yeah,
Rain
yeah,
World's
yeah.
got going
It's
on.
very Geiger.
Um,
And they just
and like
toss you
I don't
into
know, like the
walking simulator sometimes.
yeah, that's like kind of cute,
Yeah.
but it's also like I don't know, like the even just like the gameplay. I mean, granted, I just came off developing like a very intense strategy game, but it's surprising how sort of light the actual design is. It's like sort of tile based, like preset rooms that are interlinked that are sort of different. So think like Hades, with like monsters and kind of upgradable guns. And it's like, did we make this game like 10 years ago? Like that's what we got here. That's what we got. Um,
It's that, but bullet hell with smooth
Sort
movement.
of. Even like the bullet hell stuff is like they can't do too much of it because you're still like a vertical object as a person, so you can just kind of like jump over stuff. Um,
It gets a little,
and like
yeah.
it gets weirder. Yeah,
But I know
but
what you're
like
saying. It's not like, it's definitely not doing much that's new. Like all the new stuff it's doing, it's just like porting elements of other genres into the procedurally generated roguelike.
yeah, I was definitely just sort of like surprised about how like basic it was, but then also being like, it doesn't matter. Like the game's just pretty.
Yeah, no,
it's
that's the.
and
I feel
that's
like that's
like
a PS5 kind of thing.
this was like the thing I think when I got like my nice new TV, I was like, you know what? I figured out why people like playing console games. It's because they just work and they're pretty. And I'm playing Returnal and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty and it's fun to look at. Like that's and it's sort of enough. Like
Yep.
I don't really need much more. I can just kind of like lay down on the couch and just like vibe and not have to think too hard. Um which feels like I'm giving up, but at the same time it's like, this is kind of what I want right now.
Yeah.
So I've been enjoying that. Um, and it's been, yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to play other stuff on the PS5. Like I didn't realize that. I guess it makes sense, but like you can sort of a lot of the PS4 games you can just straight up download as PS4 games, or some have PS5 versions that you can do free upgrades to. But also it ports your save files over. So like my Elden Ring save, I guess will just come over, which is nice. Same thing with like some other games like Sekiro or whatever. Um,
There's
so
my cousin. Sorry to interrupt, but my cousin, he has a PS5, and like I went. He's like the guy who got me into video games when I was really young. Right, they had a Super Nintendo, and
mhm.
we played Super Mario World and all this stuff. And he got me in. He every like game fad that was like coming out, he was on it before that shit was like mainstream, and he would show it to me, and I would get into it. Like DDR, he had DDR mounts like before you could even find that shit in the arcades. So I so he every time I go over to his place, he lives in Vegas, and like he's like, oh, you gotta try this. What's up, Blake? Blake Hester in the chat, the
Oh
homie.
shit.
Um, so I go over to his place in Vegas, and he's like, every time I go, I spend a couple nights there or whatever, and he's like, you got, just got a PS5, you gotta try this game, and then it's like it's Ratchet and Clank, and he's got a 4K TV, and he's like just so happy to be showing me this game, and I'm like, I put it on. And I'm just like, holy shit, this looks like really freaking good. Like, it's kind of mind-boggling how good they have
Yeah.
this, because it's a PS5. You're buying this thing for like what, $500 or whatever. I have like $1,000 PC, a 4K screen, but it doesn't look as good because like the PC stuff doesn't have their shit as dialed in because the PS5 is so standardized and like it's just supposed to work, and they prioritize this stuff because it's a console that's only meant to play video games specifically. And it's just like, damn, this is fireworks. This is like marquee shit. It feels next generation. and you don't really get that experience unless like you're actually there. And I feel like it's also something I kind of miss out on as a PC gamer, because dude, PC gaming, like, it's great, but it's not. There's some stuff missing. Like, I have a 3080, and it's like kind of coming short when it comes to 4K gaming. I have to like tweak some settings and stuff and like make it look good to me. But like the PS5, you're playing that shit in 4K HDR, and it looks really good, and it runs extremely smoothly. And it's like, this feels like magic, because I'm trying to do this shit on my computer.
2 seconds to turn on.
Yeah. It's like instant. So as a product, like the console thing, it really has its value proposition. It really does work. And sitting on the couch playing a game is pretty freaking nice, honestly. The way it's meant to be played, for real. And I play a lot of PC games with controller too.
Yeah.
A lot of games are like, play the shit with the controller, like, dude.
You're like, you know what? There's no PS5 exclusives, but it is nice playing a really pretty game on a couch. And it doesn't really matter what it is.
You're not going to get that from the Switch.
You're not. You'll get cool. I mean, like, I love the Switch, you know, there's good stuff on the Switch.
No shade to the Switch, but
it's definitely one of those things where you play like Returnal, and then you go play like Tears of the Kingdom, and you're like, oh, this looks like shit.
Yeah, it's like a totally different kind of spectacle. Like 30 frames, you're like
30 frames in like 1080p. Like it's just like, oh wow, this looks bad. Like, and you see kind of, you can really kind of, I think, Stockholm syndrome yourself sometimes, because you just look at, you know, Switch graphics all day, and then you like go play Returnal, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that does look terrible.
That Ratchet and Clank game, yo, it looks really good, dude.
Yeah, dude, I'm trying to buy that just to like.
It looks really good.
Just because it looks cool to like be inside of. Like
it's like one of the best looking games I think I've ever seen.
Yeah,
it's wild.
So, anyways, I would not recommend anybody get a PS5, but also, I don't know, get a PS5. I was sort of bummed. I forgot that Bethesda like got bought by Microsoft, so I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm excited to play Starfield on the PS5." And then I was like, "Oh, it's never going to come to PS5." It's
just like less of a necessity than it's ever been, especially particularly if you have a PC. But but there's still something there. It's not like totally worthless to get a PS5.
Well, because the other thing that I was playing on PS5, Josh, was a little game called Armored Core 6.
You're playing it?
Rubicon.
You're playing it?
Yeah.
What?
Bro. You know I was playing Armored Core?
No, I didn't know that.
I was ACing.
So, okay. Let's start this conversation off. Last episode was about Baldur's Gate 3, which I was like, wow, we got a new freaking... I thought Tears of the Kingdom was a lock for Game of the Year. But that thing did not age well in the brain, you know? And... No. And Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and it was like, this game is really freaking good. I think this is the one. I think this is going to be Game of the Year. And now Armored Core 6 comes out, and now I'm like, I think this might be Game of the Year. So I don't know. I don't remember the last time this has ever happened to me, where I had like two dark horses in quick succession like that.
Looking at like the bad end. So if you're not in the bad end Discord, we do this thing where like when a new game comes out that's like big and people talk about it, we make a new channel for it. And usually there's like 2 or 3 games. And right now we have 6 games. We have Diablo 4, Final Fantasy 16, Street Fighter 7, Baldur's Gate 3, Armored Core 6, and now Starfield. It's like, Jesus Christ. Oh, I guess we just might have archived. Tears of the Kingdom was up there a while too, but it looks like we took it off. But like, there's a lot of like big shit is just like coming out all of a sudden, where it feels like I can't even like catch a breath. Like I still want to go back to Diablo 4, but I'm like, I gotta like do Armored Core and like Returnal, and like I guess Returnal's old, so that's on me. But like, big stuff is coming out continuously,
and it's all really good. So Baldur's Gate, I got to Act 3, and I had to stop. I was like, I can't do this to myself. Like, I don't have the time for this. And like, the thing is, I do have the time for it, but if I let myself, it's like, that's just going to be 20 more hours of my life that it's just going to disappear. So I had to stop. Like, I'll pick it up, and I really still do think that that's one of my stronger Game of the Year contenders. I mean, it's probably the strongest at this point. Maybe slight edge over Armored Core 6, but I feel personally like I might prefer Armored Core 6 to this game, to Baldur's Gate. So for those who
Josh,
don't know,
what's an Armored Core 6?
Yeah, Armored Core 6 is the latest installment in the Armored Core franchise of video games. This one's developed by From Software. You may know them from Demons/Dark Souls /Bloodborne /Sekiro /Elden Ring fame. And it's a game about mechs. You pilot mechs, you create mechs, and you take them out to battle with other mechs. So if you like Gundam, if you like any sort of things where it's like fighting robots, then you'll be into this thing. Which, first off, as a little bit of just to set the stage here, I was never really into mech stuff. Like, I was never really into Armored Core. And I think it's because, and I think this is like a very common thing among things that don't find their audience in a certain place, where there's a barrier to entry that, or there's like some kind of threshold for entry where you gotta have seen or done this before you get really into it, you know? And I think in this case with mechs, it's like you had to be there. You had to have been there when Gundam was coming out. You had to have been there when the whole like Gunpla,
like Zoids,
Gunpla, and all the like little model creation and stuff. That stuff is huge in Japan, and I never really understood it. I actually went to Japan, earlier this year. Went to Odaiba, and I went to like the massive Gundam that they have over there, and they have a big Gundam quote base. It's a Gundam base, and you go in there and you see all these Gundams that people have created, or like mobile suits or whatever, and the models are fucking amazing. I was like, dude, I kind of want to get into this. Like, I've never had that feeling in my life where I'm like, I want to get into this. Yeah, I won't get into it because like I suck at crafts. But that was coming out around the same time as Witch from Mercury, which is super awesome, and it really was a great introduction for me to why Gundam is so great, and what's like really cool about it is that it's like this really political show that is like extremely complex. It's about like the sickening like things that people do during wartime. It's about these kids who are not able to lead normal lives, and well, to them normal life is like a life of war and like corporate intrigue, and it's amazing to watch. And I was like, and then it's all meant to kind of sell toys. That's the kind of ironic thing about the OG Gundam stuff, is like you're just trying to sell toys, but they're just like, what if we just made the show like this extremely political, like intense thing? And I never got into that as a kid because I was like, why the fuck are they talking about all these different corporations and like political factions? I don't understand any of this. I just want to see the robots fight. So that's kind of like the barrier to entry. And then with the previous Armored Core games, they were kind of slow, a little clunky. Controlling the robots feels like just meh to me, and I never really understood it because I wasn't at the point where I was like into that shit before. Like, so think about this: like, would you have gotten into the Pokemon video game if? I mean, maybe don't answer this seriously, but the concept is there, which is like, would you get into the Pokemon video game if the anime wasn't out? You didn't already have like a love for these characters? Maybe not. I don't know. The game it's good, but it kind of goes hand in hand with buying into the franchise as a concept before that. And if you didn't have that, maybe Pokemon wouldn't click as well with you. And so with Gundam and mech stuff, I think it's similar. And but Armored Core 6, dude, this is a game.
This is the first Armored Core since, I don't know, FromSoft's really meteoric rise. Like, yes. Armored Core 5 came out in 2012.
Yes.
Yeah. For fucking PS3 and 360. And it was the 14th game. I didn't realize that. The 14th Armored Core game.
Blake says regarding the Gundam base, bro, that's the sickest place of all time. I stay building Gunpla. I don't even watch the show.
Oh, amazing.
Check out Witch from Mercury. It's only like 12 episodes, by the way. Okay.
This is like the first Armored Core game since like FromSoft really like hit with like Dark Souls, basically.
Went
Like the Dark
mainstream, yeah.
Souls,
Elden Ring, one of the biggest selling
all
games of
that,
all
like
time.
Bloodborne, Sekiro. Like this is their first game since then. So there's been like, a lot of time where they've been sort of doing Souls stuff. And I think that like, I mean, I'm not an Armored Core person, but you continue. I guess there's some context there where basically this is the first time FromSoft has done a non-Souls game, right? Basically since 2012. But with all the knowledge and expertise having come from doing Souls games for the past decade.
And rep.
The health guy got a tattoo.
Yeah, I saw that. The guy from the band Health got a big From Software tattoo across his chest.
Hard. Incredible.
It's a great game. I haven't had a game like this in a long time where it feels like old school PS2 kind of design. Where
yeah, dude, it feels old school, man.
If someone asked what level are you on, you can actually answer that question.
If someone says, "Hey, pause the game," you can
do
pause
it.
the game.
Yeah.
You can pause the game.
And you get cash so you do missions, you get cash afterwards. You can use the cash to build your mechs and like make them look and feel different. You can design them, and it's all held together by like these little briefings before your mission, and then afterwards they debrief you. But the story is extremely Souls. Like it's real deep in that whole like vibe where like everything is fucked up. There's like a severe sense of alien. I might be writing about this for bullet points, by the way, but I want to write about this kind of like severe sense of alienation the game gives you from all of the acts of violence and just the sinister people around you and the nature of the world that you're in, which is a very Soulsian thing, right? Like,
yeah, like you're playing as a sort of mercenary that lacks an affiliation with any specific side. So it'll literally be like you're fighting mercs in one mission that you are working with on the next mission.
Yeah, they're like
kind of in the middle.
We want you to kill those bastards over at Balaam. Yeah. And then the next mission, they're like, you're taking it from Balaam, and they're like, we want to kill those bastards over at Archibus, and you're just like, all right. But you're an augmented human, which is like, you're not just like some superhuman, by the way. You're
like a clone or something.
You're like a cloned, like absolute, just like abomination of a being that just lives for nothing except to do battle and fight. Like you're basically like a sack of meat that's like only there to do mech fighting. And even one of the trailers, it's like they show you and you're just like, you look like a fucking Sith where like your skin's all fucked up, you're covered in bandages. Like it's inhumane what you are as an entity. So like that's the whole frame of this game. And you're accepting all these missions, you're destroying the planet, or at least what's left of it, because basically all of humanity has been wiped out and all that's left is like these corporations. They're all fighting for the scraps and just like at constant war with one another. There's no integrity, no sense of humanity, but it's all like, the crazy thing is it's all wrapped up in this like Gran Turismo interface where it's like extremely luxurious and it's like covered in chrome and it's so sick and nice, and you're just like all these corporations
paint
like
your fucking mech, bro.
Yeah,
Give yourself like a cool
it feels
job.
so luxurious in that way.
It really feels like a Need for Speed like car tweaking menu.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
They throw a lot of like stats at you or whatever, but you're really picking some from like big chunky parts.
Yeah.
It's like you want the fucking giant rifle or the giant pistol.
Yeah.
You want like skinny fast legs, or you want like quadruped fat legs.
And it's like technical parts too. You're buying like a control chip that allows you to auto aim better. You're buying a generator that allows you to like, change the energy settings of your mech. You're buying different legs that allow you to like traverse the world in different ways. And that stuff's all really cool. Like it's the kind of game where if you're in a battle and it's not going well, you're like, well, I think I'm going to need to be faster for this fight because my enemy's really fast and I need to like be able to maneuver better. So you'll switch out your legs for something that's a little bit faster. And there's like that kind of puzzle solving element to it that's really cool. And it really encourages replayability in a very old school way as well.
Yeah.
like a Bayonetta or like character action style
Like
game.
literally like, hey, replay this mission. And it's like Josh said, it's literally levels. It's like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
play this mission, and the missions are really short. They're like 10 minutes maybe in my
Some of
experience so
them are
far.
like 3 minutes long. Some of them
And
are
it's
around
like,
10,
oh, that's it.
15.
Cool. I
Yeah.
got some more money and go upgrade my mech instead of just being like trapped in an open world, um,
I,
trying to like figure out how to make money. It's like, oh, I'll just do 2 missions.
there's been a
Cool.
lot of. Have you fought Baltius yet?
I got to the. I'm about to start the mission with the giant, like weaponized mining rig.
Okay, so no, you
I don't know if
haven't
that's
fought. You have
Baltius. No,
not fought
I'm still
Baltius.
pretty early on. Yeah.
So a lot of people got stuck at Baltius. I
Yeah,
beat
the
him on the
game is
third
also
try.
fucking hard, by the way. I think that we were sort of beating around the bush there. The game is very difficult.
So I think it's time for a little
Uh-oh.
tips segment.
Uh-oh. We don't need any tips yet. The game is difficult.
Tips. What's wrong with tips? This is the
No, I get
spirit
we-
of tips.
Well, I think you have to acknowledge the point. The game is like hard.
It is hard.
And it's hard. It's hard in like a Dark Souls hard, where like it is not like an
I disagree.
arcade action. It's not. Well, it's not. Well, not okay. Maybe you're splitting hairs. What I mean is that it's not like an arcade action mech game. Like you are, like in a given mission, you will fight. Like
I think it is
in
an
the most
arcade
recent-
action mech game.
Mm-mm.
I mean, arcade games are pretty freaking hard.
But I mean, like, I think, like, so the most recent mission I played, there were sort of um, 3 like pools of action, and each of those could sort of be seen as its own like little encounter that you get through. It's not like I'm trying to think of something comparable, like an Earth Defense Force or something, where you're like you got a mech and you're like fighting like hundreds of enemies, just slicing through shit, and it's like, it's a lot of stuff. It's like you'll be fighting encounters, at least at the start, where there's like somewhere between 3 and maybe like 10 things that are kind of like a self-contained thing where it's like fight this stuff, and there's a next one where it's like fight this stuff. There might be like a bigger person in there, and it's got this like there are specific encounters that are designed in a mission structure, instead of being something where there's like the tempo is just sort of like just kind of continual action, um like throughout the game. Actually, this mission that you're looking at right now is literally the one I just did that I'm thinking about.
The helicopter. That thing, I think
No, this is not the helicopter. This is the this is a different mission.
the tetrapod. Yeah,
I
it's
thought
a
it was
helicopter
tetrapod.
/ tetrapod. Because they also
maybe.
recycle some of the same levels, like where you go back to the same like
Yeah, like
environment.
the same area. But what I
Yeah.
mean is that it's not like don't like think that Armored Core is like some game where you're just kind of like chewing through enemies.
Yeah. I know what
It's
you're
like
saying.
it's got
It's not
got
like
a
Dynasty
sort of-
Warriors. It's got a flow.
Yeah,
it's more
yeah,
FromSoft.
yeah.
It's more Souls than that.
It's more Soulsy, and I think that because of that, like there is some difficulty when it comes to hard bosses that are like you gotta think about your kind of how you're approaching a boss. Otherwise, you will get decked.
Yeah.
You can't just like attack stuff like bullet sponge style.
Well, and one of the bosses took me like an hour and a half, straight up.
Yeah, I mean the first helicopter boss probably took me I don't know about time, probably about an hour.
Yeah.
Which, like, before we talk about tips, kind of just like I think like the other thing about Armored Core that I'm so like all this stuff, whatever, this could be like a pretty mid game. Like it's a fucking
The way they were
mech
describing
game
it,
with
yeah.
customizing and stuff, right? But the thing I've found with this game, especially coming from playing Souls games, is that it feels like fucking dancing
Yeah.
to play this game.
Yeah.
And I was like so not expecting that. And I think the main thing that this game has that something like Souls doesn't have is the sense of sort of momentum, especially because you're a giant mech. So you kind of you can do like kind of quick movements, but when you do a certain thing, you're really kind of committing to a specific like direction, so to speak. But then also because you are like you're targeting guns, there's like this right stick that has to kind of be moving around a lot more than in something like Dark Souls. that you get this sort of feeling of like rhythm and movement and flow, that the game really kind of enforces, especially because the other thing that sort of like Sekiro, um, when you attack enemies, they have something akin to like a stagger thing. So it's really in your best interest to kind of keep up the cadence of attacking and rhythm. But because all of your stuff is sort of on cooldown, and like reload timers, you've got to really be moving around a lot while also sort of priming your weapons to be attacked at the same time in this way that's just like not Souls. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean that like I'm playing Elden Ring still, and it's like I'm using the Bloodhound Fang, and most of my strategy is dodging and trying to time the Bloodhound Fang. Your mech has like four things that you could potentially do, and trying to time all those and offset their timers properly, and making sure you're in like the right position to attack with the missile at the right time when you know this thing is like it's got this like kinetic energy that when you're playing it poorly it feels really stilted, but once you kind of click with it you're like, oh, like I'm the fucking Eva, man. Like I
Yeah.
am like
It feels
I
like
am
the best mech stuff like that you've watched. And it feels
yeah,
like you're in
exactly.
control. And so I'm actually really glad you brought this up because I wouldn't have thought to have brought it up myself. But now that you bring it up, there's like a lot of different ways that I'm thinking about this, which is first off, it feels, I think a big thing that contributes to the way that this game feels is that first off, your default kind of movement is you're sliding. Think of it as like
Yeah.
almost like a drift. So I mean, the default movement is like a walk. Your mech is just walking, but you're never going to be moving around like that. You're always going to be boosting around, which it just feels like you're drifting around on like a surfboard or something like that. You're kind of
Yeah.
hovering around the map essentially at a pretty fast rate. And because of that, like the whole game feels like there's this sense of drifting in motion. And what
Because you're always
contributes
on ice, yeah.
what contributes to that really dynamic feeling too is that a lot of that stuff is happening in relation to your camera, which is it's mechanical by definition because you're looking through the eyes of a mech and you lock onto something, and basically everything in this game is locked on. So if you look at an enemy, you're automatically locking onto it, and as long as the enemy is kind of within your massive reticle, you will be hitting that enemy. There's some
If they
like
don't dodge.
tracking that allows you to do that more accurately depending on like what range you're in. So like if you have a close range chip, you're going to track really well at close range, but if you have a medium range chip, you're going to track really well at medium range. But all that is to say that you're always locked onto your enemy. You're always kind of drifting around them, and so you have that anime kind of feel of like two objects kind of both in really fast motion drifting across the screen. It has that like dynamic feel of, I don't know, like a dolly zoom or something like that, where it's like something's
Yeah.
moving closer to you in relation as you're moving further away, and all these objects are moving around on the screen in a really interesting way. So like sometimes you'll just be drifting to the side of something and like really strafing around something, moving around really quickly, and this you see like the thing that you're trying to track, your enemy is trying to just like get its eyes on you and figure out where you are and stuff, and you just feel fast. It feels really speedy, and then you can dodge. You have these like quick boosts that allow you to dash from side to side, and all of that stuff, like kind of the intricacies of the dynamics of how you move change with what you have equipped. So some of the feet are like tank legs, where you can still drift around, but you can't really strafe as well from side to side. First, your wheels need to orient before you can kind of move in that direction. You can't just like strafe side to side the way you can with legs. And then there's like reverse canted legs that allow you to jump a lot higher. Which those are my shit, by the way. Like I really love playing with the really fast mech. Once you start getting
I was
those lighter
wondering
builds,
about that. Yeah, like
it's
just super light, like double pistols or
oh
something.
my
You just
god,
click
it
them
feels
flying around.
so good when you get the fast stuff and you can just boost left and right. There's this booster that you can equip that the vertical thrust is not that great, except the ability to do the dodge boosts is a lot higher, so you can do a lot more of those. So you can basically dodge, drift around, regain your boost, float around in the air a bit, and it feels so good. And like that feeling in this game, and the way that you describe it is dancing. That's so accurate. It really feels different than a lot of other games, especially like third-person shooters that we tend to have. I would
even different than just like a Souls game. Like I think that
Oh yeah,
I think like people like I know like Vadi Video put out a video that I watched like some of where it's like this game is like Souls, whatever. And I think that I mean I've never played an Armored Core game besides this one. And I think there's a way to sort of see someone playing the game and sort of see Souls in it. And I think that he's not wrong, based on what I know about the other games. But I think the thing this has is that the sort of like it's like it really took the sort of Sekiro style mobility stuff and really even amped it up more than that and made it like an intrinsic part of fighting. Because if you like, the thing like two is sort of like Sekiro and maybe unlike something like Dark Souls, like if you're not playing to the strengths of your build, like you will lose. Like you will just get decked by like tons of stuff. And I'm not smart enough in this game yet, like I am in a Souls game, to understand like the mistakes I'm making. But I can see sometimes where it's like, oh, this enemy's health went down like half its health in like a minute, whereas before it took me like 10 minutes to make it go down a quarter. And it's like clearly like there's something I'm doing that is like better or worse in these scenarios. And I think that like I think the game could be better about legibility of a lot of that stuff, but I also think that it's clear that there's a certain skill ceiling here that's really high that may not be apparent from just watching gameplay. That I think is like really, really cool to tap into. And it feels cool because when you're really doing it, it feels like you are working to the strengths of the mech that you built, which is like, again, not very Soulsy. Souls is like, are you playing a light build or a heavy build? And there's kind of one way to do enemies in that way. And this is like, there are actually tangibly different ways to control your mech based on what you have equipped. I think it's really, really dope.
Yeah. So, I mean, for a little slight tips segment here,
now,
what
give
you're
me some
talking
tips.
about,
I'm ready for
what
some
you're
tips.
talking about is when you build up the enemy stagger meter, when you actually stagger them, they take what's called direct damage, which means all of your any sort of hits that you get on them during that time that they are staggered do a massive amount more damage. So the only real way that you can do really kind of significant damage in this game is by hitting the enemy while they are staggered. And when you're hitting them when they're not staggered, you're not really doing much. So the goal should kind of be to build up that stagger meter as much as possible, which is a very kind of Sekiro-esque way of playing the game. But in Sekiro, it's like once you stagger the enemy, you basically are killing them because you just stab them through the face or whatever. But in this game, if you waste all your resources to stagger the enemy and you're like reloading and you don't have anything to do during that time, then you're not able to capitalize on that. So part of it is like saving some of your resources for when you actually get the stagger. And then another big part of it is like actually figuring out how to stagger the enemy. And I think in the early game, one of the best ways to do it is to equip the sword. The sword is just so damn
sword,
good.
Baby.
Just hit him with that sword, dude. It does huge damage and huge stagger, which in also, the game it's called impact, by the way. The stagger damage is called impact. So look at your impact.
Tips on the sword, it swings more than once. It's like the animation and the control doesn't really tell you this, but if you pull the left trigger,
it tells you
swing.
It tells you in the yes, it does. It's in the stats. There's a stat that says consecutive hits. Consecutive hits.
Bullshit. I'm not going to open that menu.
You have to. So you have to read. No, it's not. It's not in the detailed. No, it's not in the detailed version. It's in the base. It's in the base reading of the stats. It says consecutive hits.
Here's the thing, Josh. Here's the thing. In the first level with the helicopter, you don't even at that point you don't have access to the stats for your mech. As far as I know.
That's true. I think that first mission is kind of bullshit. I don't think that they do a good enough job of tutorializing what's happening in the game. And I think
feels like it's a total filter
for a game that's like
it's like
so
Gascony.
Yeah, for a game that's so focused on information and knowing how to build stuff, I don't think that they do nearly a good enough job of kind of telling you what is happening there. And then the other thing is once you start unlocking OS chips, which is just like an upgrade currency essentially, I highly recommend you get the terminal armor. It's like a second wind type thing where when you die.
This fucking mech. Sorry, we're looking at the video. Run some video on the YouTube. This mech looks sick. I'm just seeing this person's mech.
It's the reverse legs, dude. I'm telling you. The reverse legs.
This one's like a quadruped.
This one is reversed. It's the reverse legs.
Oh, damn. This looks
reverse joint legs. They're awesome, dude. I'm telling you.
This looks sick.
Yeah, they're the shit. But yeah, my big tip. Okay, so for buy the terminal armor. It's huge. Like that thing saved my ass in bosses so many times that I've beaten like 3 bosses with literally 1 HP because it saves your life, and then you can get a couple more hits in and just like finish them off. So there's the terminal armor, and then also ABF. Okay, always be firing. Never stop firing. Just always be firing.
Especially the rifle, because you have to reload. I think you have to actually let off the trigger for it to reload.
Maybe. Or you can manually reload, but manually reloading isn't.
How do you manually reload?
You press Y or triangle, I guess, on the PS5.
What?
You hold it and then you click the button of the thing that you want to reload. So you have to like hold Y, and then if you want to reload your right arm, then you press right trigger.
I think you might still have to release the trigger then in that case to register another press. But yeah.
Yeah.
Good to know.
But I mean, it's in between battles. It's actually like really crucial that you do that, because if you go in with just one bullet left. I was wondering about that
because, I was like, I guess I have to use all these bullets because I don't know how to reload.
Yeah, no, you hold Y or triangle, and then you.
Another thing the game doesn't tell you: the tutorial is literally like you move this way and you jump this way, and this is how you fire weapons.
It does tell you how to. It does tell you how to reload in tutorial text, but the tutorial text it doesn't show for long enough. It doesn't make you do the thing. It's not like, hey,
there's training.
Do this and then you can move forward. I need to make sure you can do this before you go forward. There's none of that. But it's a really freaking good game, and
it feels good in part because it feels so old school. I think that there's a question I want to answer on this episode too about open world games, but this game is delightfully not open world. You just start a mission and you do it and you get money and you buy some parts and you do another mission, and it's wow, that feels nice.
When's the last time you had that? Yeah.
When's the last time you felt a sense of completion that wasn't completing a shrine in Tears of the Kingdom?
And for all that, it doesn't feel like we're missing much.
No.
It feels like a very complete world.
There's literally you go into the world and it looks sort of open world, but there's boundaries, and the boundaries aren't weirdly high mountains that you can't climb. It's literally just an invisible wall that's got red tape around it, and it's you can't go past here.
And you're okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That makes me feel better that I'm not missing anything over here in this corner of the map that's going to have a secret item.
There are secret items though.
God damn it.
And that's kind of annoying. Yeah, I just look it up. That feels very old school. That's one of the most old school parts of that game where I'm okay, I did not really miss this, but I guess it's cool in a way.
But I think the ability to it's literally when you do a mission, you can literally just replay the mission. So there's no weird mission FOMO where you're hope on this run I get this item, otherwise I have to restart my 30-hour playthrough. It's no, you just play the mission again and you can get it, and it takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Even I was excited about that because I didn't totally understand that, and then that first enemy you kill that gives you whatever those passes are, I didn't do it the first time, and I was oh man, I'm not gonna be able to do this again if I don't do it. When do I unlock this mission again? And it's oh no, you can literally just do it again. You can progress the whole story and then come back in 10 missions and just do that again with better stuff.
It's also kind of the game's version of quote grinding, even though you don't really there's no reason that you have to do it, because you get money for replaying missions, the same amount.
Really?
So, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you replay a mission, you just get more money.
The money. That's great.
Yeah. And also
that's similar when you sell weapons, they sell for the buy cost.
Yeah.
Which is super dope. So it's I feel that's a thing we talked before, and it was brought up on the Discord a while ago, but there was discussion of the sort of FromSoft formula not totally working in Elden Ring because, and this is the open world question I don't again want to talk about in a little bit, but basically that because the whole world is so diffuse, it's very hard to sort of force the player to adapt a certain strategy or necessarily understand where the player's at. Whereas Armored Core, I haven't got here yet. Actually, I sort of got here, and I think other people in the Discord have gotten to a similar place where there are battles you just cannot do unless you like have certain stuff equipped, and not in like a this is bullshit kind of way, but just like, oh, I need to learn something new or change up my weapons or kind of mix it up. And the game gives you the ability to do that at like very low cost because you can sort of exchange stuff at cost.
Right.
So instead of having to be like, damn it, I just bought this thing for like 100,000 and it sells for 10, and I'm gonna go grind 2 missions to get that 90 back. You just swap it out and sell it, which I think is super, super, super cool, especially as a dad. Ding, ding, ding. Check your bingo card. It's nice to not have to feel like I have to grind to get to the good part of a game.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that stuff.
Oh, it's good from the beginning for sure.
Yeah.
You want to talk about some open world stuff? Get some questions.
Sure. Yeah. So we had a question sort of related, I guess, to what I was talking about with Armored Core, which was it arrived from friend slash fellow Superculture member Reed over at Bullet Points wrote an article for Wired. I say an article. He wrote the Starfield review for Wired, and in it he said there's simply so much packed into it that it's nearly impossible to tell what's worthwhile. And this quote really stuck out to me for a few different reasons. I just want to dovetail this too with someone in Bad End, ironically or unironically asked, what do they say? They said, "Is it time for open world games to die?" And like playing Armored Core, I'm sort of like, yeah, maybe. Like we had this run at open world, and what it's starting to feel like is that open world games are so big that like the idea of playing the game itself is starting to become stressful. Because before, like when stuff was open world, like I think about, I don't know, like Oblivion or even Morrowind or like other sort of initial open world games. The games were like open world, but there was like specific little points of interest that were just dispersed across the whole map. So it's like they took a game that was a normal size and they kind of like spread it across a really big world. And there was just that much little stuff around. And what feels like's happened now is that we've done that process, but then because like games are somewhat easier to make now because of better tooling and whatever, we're able to fill in all those gaps that could happen when you sort of stretch the game out. There becomes like so much stuff to do that the idea of doing any one thing feels like you're inevitably missing out. Like it's hard to feel like any specific action is worthwhile when you know there's 100 other things you could be doing. And you know, it might be that you picked the bad thing when there's like so much other cool shit to find. And even if it's like all good, that's like still sort of stressful. And what's like, I don't know, like playing Armored Core, it's like, dude, I can play one mission and like I'll do it and I'll be done. And I can play the next mission and I'll be done and do it and it'll be fine and cool. Like there's no, I don't get FOMO playing Armored Core. I'm just like playing the game. Whereas like I think about booting up like Tears of the Kingdom and being like, damn, dude, I don't even know where I would start. Like everything feels like okay. But then the other thing that you get on top of that is that because the games are so big and you can't really anticipate like a player's current configuration, you get this really big sense of like diffuse reward structures, because like Tears of the Kingdom can't give you an amazing item like 2 hours into the game, because like then you'll have the best item that will sort of trivialize all other rewards. So what it does is that it makes all rewards be like sort of mediocre, so they all feel like just barely worth it. Whereas like I play Armored Core, I get 100,000 credits and I can like buy some cool new missiles. Then in the game from that point on, because of the mission structure being sort of limited, knows that I have the ability to have strong missiles, which then will change the character of the encounters that I'll do for the next mission. So it actually feels like progress. So it feels like there's this weird place we've got to with open world games where like we've gotten really good at them, but I'm not totally sure that's like really great from a player experience. And like, I don't know, Josh, what do you think? I haven't actually played Baldur's Gate, but I imagine there's a similar feeling in there of like, there's just so much, and Starfield obviously being sort of the starting point for this conversation. I think neither of us have played it yet. Hopefully by next podcast, we'll have something to say about it. But,
Yeah, I
It's like
mean,
it's a weird structure to sort of grapple with, because in some ways it feels like, you know, what we want as gamers, right? But then in practicality, it's like, and who's really got like 300 hours? Like even when I was a kid, I feel like the most I played a game was like 60 hours, like 70 hours, maybe. But even then, like you got school, you got sports, you got like stuff that's not just like gaming, and you got new games coming out, you know?
yeah, I'm just processing this very heavily because you you're right that like to a large extent this is what we want, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I can't. I think what makes it difficult is that I like the feeling of just like running around in an open space where there's something new, even if it's just like another hill. Um, but at the same time, it's like I'm very cognizant of the fact that it's not all the density of design does not run consistently throughout every open world game. By definition, you're going to have, vast
Yeah.
swaths of territory or land or whatever it is that's just empty, or what you're doing is just like inherently less valuable than what's going on in the city or the main hubs of the game that have been obviously more handcrafted. But I still enjoy kind of running around in these big sandboxes and playgrounds. It's just that I also acknowledge, and in my brain, like deeply when I actually think about it critically, as opposed to just going by my gut, I know that I'm not getting anything out of it. In fact, like it just feels that time just is way more likely to just disappear. You know,
Yeah.
I think the only time that I've seen it done right, or in cases where it actually feels really good, is something like Red Dead Redemption 2, which obviously that entire game is beautiful, and
Hmm.
there's this sense of immersion in this like American frontier and world building that you don't get in a lot of other open world games. But I'm like, I would not want every game to be Red Dead Redemption 2
That's
at
what's weird,
all.
right? Is that it feels like every game wants to be Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, and they're like they're
Every big
never gonna
AAA
get
game
there.
wants that.
So what's
Well,
interesting,
they are, and then you get all these games that like they're all sort of competing for all of your time, and so no one's playing anything. Because like the fucking biggest, like GTA 5 is still fucking huge.
yeah,
That's insane.
I think a
Like
big part of this is the online thing, though, which is
totally,
giving
totally. But it's
another,
like
it's
there's
bringing
still
another
like
vector to the whole
people are
thing.
still milking GTA 5, both from Rockstar is selling, and like people are buying, and that's insane. I'm not saying it's like good or bad, but it's like Starfield is competing with GTA 5.
Yeah,
That's insane.
yeah,
And that's it's only going to get worse in that way. And it might still be competing against GTA 5, where like or like I mean something like Fortnite sort of, but it's like there's this trajectory where like that's sort of the expectation. And so instead of competing against GTA 5, people would just play GTA 5 instead of playing Starfield or whatever. Um,
What's
sorry to cut you
interesting
off.
about the way they brought up Baldur's Gate is that's not, I would not describe that as an open world game. It's
Mm.
it's pretty linear, um, but also it's a very open possibility game.
Mm-hmm.
If you just like look at the maps of that game, they're not that big. Like it's
Baldur's
pretty
Gate?
small maps. Yeah, yeah. But there's just so much that you can do in those spaces that it feels extremely dense, because it is like the way that you interact with people could vary drastically. The way that you like encounter, or the way that you approach specific encounters can vary drastically depending on the terrain. There's just a lot of variables hidden within those spaces, and I feel like that's a very valuable way of pursuing it too. But I think a lot of this also is that what we're talking about is like a time investment type thing, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily
Dude, but
time.
also like but like I'm trying to think like I've put like 140 hours into Elden Ring, and like I'm not totally, I mean this is a very fraught comparison to make, but I'm not like totally sure that like it's given me a commiserate amount of enjoyment for how much time I put into it. Like it's fun, I've enjoyed it moment to moment, but if I looked and said this took me 140 hours to do, it's like I could do a lot with 140 hours. That's not like running around the lands betwixt. Um, and
There's
it, which is like it's like it's sort of a bullshit thing, but it's also like I don't know, like that is it's also a real metric, man. That's a lot of time.
I think when you're young, there's these like axes upon which you enjoy games, and there's like just fun of the gameplay, the beauty of the graphics, the sense of exploration of a bit of a massive world, and that was one that for a very long time we prized above kind of almost everything else. It was just like, what can I do in this massive area? And that's like the whole
Like
Ubisoft thing. It's the map game
the
phenomenon, the watch towers where you unlock new parts of the map. All that shit is coming off of that. And then I think now there's a new kind of vector that we're seeing where it's how much does this game actually value my time, and not even in like a dollar per fun quotient type thing. It's a
uh-huh.
it's a like, am I actually, how much am I enjoying this game in the moment to moment? That maybe it's us getting older, but I think a lot of people have this where like, is this game just giving me the runaround, you know?
Dude, I think it's like I mean this we talked about this before on like the podcast. But I
DTF.
also just think young people just aren't playing this stuff. Like I think that you're like the time commitment that something like Starfield asks of you is really big, and I don't think it's necessarily like even a reasonable ask for a young person who's like we talked before again about like sort of the diffuse nature of play or something for like Gen Z or whatever. But like I think if you asked any Zoomer like, do you want to spend 10 hours on TikTok this week or play 10 hours of Starfield? Unless you're like a real fucking gamery gamer, I expect most people would answer is like for TikTok or
Or
something.
do you want to play 10 hours of Valorant with your friends?
Yeah, well, yeah. Do you want to play 10 hours of Fortnite? Like people are gonna say 10 hours of Fortnite. They don't want to. They don't want to be alone in space, and so it feels like yeah, Starfield is fucking huge or whatever, but it's also huge with the type of person that wants to play something like Starfield, which I think is becoming an increasingly small audience.
But then
And those
again, you
games can
have
sell like
Tears of the
millions of
Kingdom
copies or whatever.
selling like hotcakes.
I would be surprised if the average playtime of Tears of the Kingdom was over 10 hours. I would be very surprisrised.
But the
I don't even know if there's a way to get that
Well, I'm
data.
not talking about the actual time played. I'm talking about how it's sold.
Oh yeah, people fucking love Zelda. What
Yeah,
else are you gonna do? But it's like it's
Baldur's
sort of
Gate
like
did pretty well too, but again, not a. Actually, Baldur's Gate did really well, if I
really
recall
wonder like
correctly. But so, for me to answer the question, is it time for open world games to die? No, but I think it's time for bite-size level-based games to come back. That's what I think. I
bring
think
back
I
baby.
want more Armored Core 6s. That's for damn sure. And I think it's a more sustainable model for someone like From to do than fucking another Elden Ring.
What's the art gonna do? They're doing DLCs for that.
Let's get some platformers back, baby.
I
It's time
guess
for
we
the
have that. I mean,
platformers to
that's
come back.
like the indie space is sort of doing. I think it's more about if AAA was sort of adopt that.
Yeah, and they could, because this storytelling, I think, From is doing the work and showing that you can still tell stories and have really compelling gameplay in this format, this old school game format.
Yeah.
Mario Wonder coming out soon.
Dude, I am hyped for that. I think
Yeah,
that game is going to fucking rip.
I think so too. It's got all the Mario ideas in a very compact space. It looks like it's going to be surprising as hell.
It's gonna be fucking new and weird. Like
Yeah.
it just looks like they're, yeah. Damn, dude. I'm so excited for that game. Like I think that's just gonna. I'm gonna say it's gonna be my game of the year. Like I just feel like it's going to be so good.
There's so many. Our Goaty
The thing
episode is going to
about
be
it too,
wild
dude.
this year.
The thing about it too that I think is a good sign is that they have. Damn, I'm so excited about this game. But I think that one thing I'm excited about because by its inclusion, which is the like weird flag setting stuff and like ways that you can basically play catch up with levels that they only typically do. You only do something like that if your game is going to be hard and weird. Like that's you don't do those sorts of systems if your game is easy. And I think this game is going to fucking ball out on like weird, like fucking Kaizo. Was it Kaizo? How do you say it?
Kaizo.
Like it's gonna be stuff like that. Like I'm just like ready for this game to be super, super, super weird and crazy and like difficult in a way that I think people aren't anticipating. It's gonna. It looks like the fucking Dark Souls of Mario games, like with like all like the persistent online stuff in the background. Like,
oh yeah,
I think
it's a Strand game, baby.
It's a Strand, like, dude. I'm very, very excited for that.
It's the first 2D Mario in like 12 years or something like that. The first new one, yeah. I think like New Super Mario's is the last new 2D Mario that has come out, and that's like 12 years old or something.
Is that true?
Yeah, it is. Think about it.
Because the other ones were sort of 3D.
Because they're all New Super Mario. New Super Mario U.
Like the Luigi expansion.
A lot of that stuff is 3D.
All right. You answered some more questions and ended up.
Yeah.
Rounded out. All right. We got some questions at the end of the ep. Who we got here? Pulling them up. What is the next stage for cooking games? I haven't heard from Cooking Mama in a while. Maybe it's time for Cooking Dad to take the stage.
If Dave the Diver is any indication,
that's true.
We're going to see them become more holistic farming, farm to table.
I feel like isn't every cozy game is like a cooking game.
Yeah, and that's
I guess like cooking.
I feel like no game really captures what it's like to actually cook. You know,
what's the bear of cooking games?
Overcooked.
No,
but actually, that's silly.
I think there's a legit good cooking game. Is this game called Cook Serve Delicious?
Cook Serve Delicious. Yeah.
Those games do really well on Steam too. I think that's like.
They're cool games. Cook Serve Delicious is dope.
I think Cook Serve Delicious is like kind of that's where we're at with cooking right now.
That's the gold standard.
Cooking Mama.
Yeah. But it's not. It still doesn't. That's not what cooking feels like to me, you know?
What about what was that, like the Vibes cooking game, like the ramen game?
The ramen game.
There was like a game where it was like really pretty ramen.
Oh yeah, it was like a mobile game, I think.
Is it called Noor?
I know what you're talking about. I forgot what it's
Noor.
called.
Nour. Wow. Noor's website is food.game.
Play with your food. I gotta play this game actually.
Is this out?
Oh, it's Panic.
It's not out yet.
It's not? That makes sense.
I think Noor, maybe this is where we're cooking. It's an aesthetic. It's a vibe.
An absurd food art playground.
There you go. There's your answer. Noor is what's next for food. Next question. We're starting to get a slow drip of Dark Souls remakes. What is the future of that library without the actual hardware? Is that true?
What was the question?
We're starting to get a slow drip of Dark Souls. Oh, DS remakes. Nintendo DS remakes. What's the future of that library without the actual hardware? I mean, if you're a real Nintendo DS head, you know that most of the second screen stuff was total bullshit. Like most games didn't use the second screen.
I recently jailbreaked my DS. 3DS.
Really? Do you have a 3DS?
Yeah, I have.
Do that.
It's modded. It's actually so nice. I just have like I could theoretically just get every game. Yeah, it's very easy. And you can just get like a 32 gig chip for it.
Just
like
put every single
and
game
just
on there.
And dude, the
which you own the copies of, right?
Yeah, I own
all of them. Yeah,
I actually do. The sticks, the memory, it's like so cheap right now. It's like $10 for
Yeah.
like a 64 gig or 128 gig or something. But it's a cool little system, man. The thing is, a lot of the games for the 3DS were coming out at a time when Nintendo, they weren't doing
They were in
so
the,
good.
They were in the shitter.
And they weren't making as good of games, to be honest. I was playing some Fantasy Life. That game it's cool, but holy shit, dude! It has a Nintendo thing where the text scrolls excruciatingly
That's
slow.
Level 5.
Okay. However, this was like a hallmark of just Nintendo gaming at the time in general.
Sure. Slow scrolling text, kind of clunky gameplay. Mario 3D Land is probably the best game they put on that system. No, dude. The answer is Link Between Worlds.
I think Mario 3D Land is better, but Link Between Worlds is very good. It's a very good game. I'm not gonna debate you on that. But if you look at the library, like, it's not quite there. Brood says the games on the 3DF
25.
often feel like they hit that AA fun zany weird shit, but a little scuffed. Yeah, it's all scuffed for sure.
Scuffed. That's great.
The I think the OG DS is a bit better.
Yeah, but I still think though. I mean, to the point of the question, like, what do you do with that software without the hardware? It doesn't matter. Like, I just really think that, like, I played a lot of DS, and I can rarely think of any game that really, really needs that second screen and really, really, really needs the touch input. I think the closest thing you get is like Elite Beat Agents, but like you can just click if you really want to. That's not crazy. What was the there was a DS game where you like drew symbols on the screen to cast spells. It was like an RTS. Do it with a mouse.
I don't remember.
I don't know. But I think, like, to the point of the question, like, I think they'll just keep pushing them out. Like, I think it is a green valley that they can start pulling from, like they did for World Ends With You. And
Yeah.
I think it will be good, especially because they've already kind of proven they're doing that, where basically they re-released the whole Wii U catalog on Switch and no one blinked. Like, oh, cool.
I'm telling you, man, that era, they were kind of lost in general.
It was bad, dude.
It never felt. It felt like they were like never going to come back.
It was like
felt like that might be the end.
Literally on his deathbed.
Yeah.
Like, didn't want to do anything.
It was grim. Like, I really did not feel like it was possible for them to come back, and then they did in massive fashion.
All right, is Jasant going to hit big with the climbers? Josh, this question's for you. How's the Jasant talk at the climbing gym?
I'm not hearing much at the climbing gym, to be honest with you. But that said, the game's not out yet. I did play the demo, actually. It doesn't quite feel like climbing, but it's climbing in a way. It's a little clunky, but it's endearing in a way. A lot of those indie 3D games from 10 years ago feel. It's got that kind of like Journey vibe to it. I dig it. I think it'll be cute. Okay. But it's not, I wouldn't describe it as like a game that captures the essence of climbing. And I don't really know what that would feel like. I feel like that game would feel like QWOP at its core.
Do you think this is you being like way too climbing pilled to ever accept a game adaptation? Or do you think that, like, in the broad strokes, it's sort of like climbing enough to like convey that to someone?
I think like Uncharted 2 captures climbing better, even though it's like you're just holding up or whatever. The way that just watching the movements of Nathan Drake and like how he's thinking about these problems and stuff, it's a little bit more dynamic in that way. It feels like you're watching climbing as more than playing it, but that is closer than I think what Jusant is doing in some ways. I think like all the like rope stuff that you're doing in Jusant is more accurate to climbing in real life, but even then it's like it's very much highly. I boulder. I boulder, so it's not even really close.
Uh, will the Elder Scrolls 6 come out before or after midnight of January 1st, 2030? I think it'll come out before. I think Elder Scrolls 6 will come out when the PS6 comes out. I think it's going to be a launch title for whatever's next.
Peering into the old
IMO.
crystal ball.
Yeah. I don't see it coming out for the current gen based on when they said they'd started development and they just launched Starfield. I think they're separate teams, but like there's no way it comes out in like a year, not 2 years. And then at that point you're 5 years out from the PS6 launch, and Nintendo's theoretically launching a new console in a year or two. Like they're definitely going to. Elder Scrolls won't be on that. I mean, who knows? But I imagine it will be a launch title to sell.
It's coming out in 2028.
Xbox.
It's coming out in 2028. They got their new engine.
Oh my god.
They got a base.
Can we blame CinemaSins? CinemaSins for some of what passes as analysis of games. What is CinemaSins?
It's not very good film crit. It's mostly like focused on like plot holes and that type of shit.
Yes. I think the answer is yes.
Man, it's so, bro. Crit is like the state of crit is just so sad, man. It's not even just like it's not popular. People hate critics. Like, it's
I really
just
feel like there's like something about this which is about like downward pressure produced by global economic circumstances. Like if you've got $60
fandom, dude.
to
It's
spend on a
fandom.
game, I mean fandom's part of it, I think, but like I think that what you're talking about is like it feels like such a symptom of everyone being super stressed out and wanting to just enjoy a thing without someone telling them that the thing they like is bad. On top of like America's reading on average at like a 6th grade reading level, that the idea of someone saying something critically about a game means that they hate it and that they're invalidating your purchase decision. Like there just feels like so little flex in society to accept or like meaningfully weather that.
You know what I also think?
It puts crit in a real shitty place.
You know how I feel, dude?
Like just imagine there being like a food critic during the Great Depression, and they're like, you know, that bread you're eating is not that good, and you're like, well, fuck you, I have bread right now. Like I feel like that's sort of where we're at.
I mean, it's a compelling. I think like that premise in and of itself is not bad, but I also don't know if we're at that point where people are that strapped. Like if you're buying video games, you already can buy video games, or if you're watching a movie, you already can watch a movie. But the thing to me, it betrays a lack of confidence in the American public in their taste that I think is brought about by like this extreme sense of insecurity that people have in what they like or dislike, right? Because when I hear someone rip something that I really like, right, my first instinct definitely used to be that, where I was like, what the like, you must be seeking attention because this thing is good. But it's also like that rooted from a deeper sense within me that was like, does that mean I'm wrong about this? Like, you have to ask that question. For you to take that question personally, you need to feel like it is a personal insult against you, which means that you lack confidence in your perspective on that thing. It's like if someone, I'm trying to think of a good analog to this in real life, where if someone like insults you or someone says something about like, I don't know, there's some sort of translation. I'm usually really good with these types of analogs, but I'm not finding a very good one. But it's like if someone talks crap about the pants that you're wearing, right? And you're wearing baggy pants and you're on the cargo pants type thing. If someone says like, oh, those suck, and they wear skinny jeans, right? I know that like my pants are way more fashionable than theirs. But if I'm the type of person who does not feel confident in my style, hasn't put any thought into it, and someone says like, dude, your pants look fucking ugly, I would be like, I would take it really personally. I would be upset. I would want to lash out at this person. I'd be like, screw you, man. Like, who are you to talk? But if someone says it about me and like they're clearly a scrub when it comes to this, then I'm like, what are you like? Okay, you go off, I guess. You know, like I know that my pants are good because I just feel confident in my ability to assess fashion and or media or whatever it is. And I think that most people don't have that when it comes to media. I think they do, like they only watch Boss Baby and everything is like getting major Boss Baby vibes from this. And so when someone says Boss Baby sucks, they're like, screw you, man. Like that's no way. You're crazy. Like we gotta brigade this guy.
I think the thing in games is that people sort of substitute the ability to think about something or like to develop a taste with just like listening to like marketing people or marketing engines talk about stuff they should care about.
Yeah.
Like it's really hard to see trailers, billboards, fucking ads, all your favorite streamers, Steam plastered whatever about Starfield, and also maintain that that's not the kind of game that you like. Like right. I think it's really hard to sort of put your taste in front of a marketing engine and say I don't care about that. And I think that an easier option is to say, well, I have to obviously care about that. And I think that's where you get this weird friction that happens when you start to define your taste based on what someone else is telling you you should care about, either when you don't like it or whatever stake you've put in that thing falls apart because the reviews are bad or like whatever. Like that's when it becomes difficult and you have this like crisis of conscience.
Also,
like I think the person who doesn't care about their clothes like doesn't care about their clothes. But if someone told you that, you know, baggy pants were cool and you put on baggy pants, not because you like baggy pants, but because someone else liked baggy pants.
Yes.
And someone tells you your pants look like shit. You're like, well, what does that mean? And then if you don't have a leg to stand on to say like, well, I like this. If your answer is that, well, someone else likes this, it's like, okay, well, like you still feel bad though, so you should have an answer to that.
And then so that's the thing is like then I hear if you listen to a critic like Anthony Fantano or something, right, and he hated an album you really liked, yeah, you could be really upset about that, but like, don't you have any confidence in your taste? Like this is just, he always says at the beginning of his videos, like, you know, this is just my opinion, right?
Yeah, dude,
and it's like, why are you getting upset?
Like he would love nothing more, I bet. I mean, I've stopped watching him just because whatever, but like if someone came to him with a take that was totally opposite of his and had a good reason it was opposite, I bet he would love that.
He would. He's not like, he's
like, I think every critic loves to hear good takes in the opposite direction. It's just that the critical discourse in general is so bad right now that there's like a dearth of literally anything that's like saying something.
And also the other problem is that people who think that they are good at crit don't have any compelling arguments for why anything they like is good or why anything they dislike is bad. Like all their arguments are these pre-canned things they heard on some YouTube channel from someone who doesn't know what they're talking about anyway. It's like, it's wild when people talk about how good something is and they're like, man, well, the graphics are just so good. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, why does that matter? Like, when has graphics ever been the cornerstone of what makes a game good? Like, when has, you know, there's so many things that people say in either direction where I'm like, none of what you're saying like actually makes any sense. And then I start feeling like I'm going crazy, man, with this One Piece adaptation. I mean, part of the issue with this is that I'm on TikTok, and anytime anyone says anything negative about the One Piece adaptation, it's like, oh, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I feel like I'm actually losing it because the show, it's cute, but it is not very good, man. It's not a very good show. I'm sorry. And that's fine. I personally just don't think it's a very good show. I think it's working with really great source material and that it's doing a good job of portraying that plot on on a screen without losing everything about it. But I think a lot of like the main stuff that makes One Piece good is not really translating very well to the live action. And people are like upset if someone says that. They're like, what are you talking about? I haven't finished it yet, but so far it feels like a Netflix show and not a particularly good one. But I don't know, man.
If you have confidence in your taste, man, you got to become the Anthony Fantano of Netflix original releases.
I'm very confident in my taste. I'm very, very confident in my taste. I'm not. There is no right. I know that there's no right or wrong, and I know that
like people like assuming that like taste is that the fact that they just like watch what's new on Netflix. It's like that's not taste. That's you just watching what is released.
Yeah, and I also think that there's a dying breed, which is a critical critic who's not just a curmudgeon. You know, like
I think it's because the curmudgeons are what proved out to like drive ad revenue.
Yes, exactly. Where it's a person who's just like
Armand White.
They hate everything. Like yes.
Yeah.
But and then like so those people get a bad rap, but people are not familiar with folks who like have some opinions that are really strong about things that like people that are really popular. And then they have some opinions that are like negative against things that are really popular, and vice versa, like a wide range of differing opinions.
I have a question.
What's up?
Question for you.
What's up?
Do you think if games cost more money, crit would matter more? Like if the average game was like $180.
Huh. That's a really good question.
Because I was thinking about this because I don't really care much about games crits anymore. A lot of the critics I like left, besides like Reed and bullet points in general, but most people like don't write anymore. But I read a lot of crit, I guess like a lot of board game crit is bad and it's not actual good crit, but there are some like legit good critics, and I read their stuff, and I do care what they have to say about a game because I'm purchasing something that takes up physical space in my house and often costs like, I mean, it's cheaper than a game, but the physical space thing is real. It's like, you know, there's some sort of dollar to physical space comparison to be made, but some stuff costs like, you know, $70, $80. And it's more money, or like really big stuff. Like for a really big game, you know, I read reviews of it before I buy it in a way that does 100% shape if I'm going to buy something or not. And I sort of wonder if games being as cheap as they are have become more resilient to crit because like I think as we've talked about many times on the podcast, games are way cheaper than they should be in general when you consider like inflation and stuff. And it's weird because it's pushed the value understanding to be something that feels maybe more disposable, and as such like no one cares about an opinion on like something that is cheap because it's just cheap. You can just buy it or you just watch it on YouTube or something.
So I guess my answer, my homebrewed ass answer is that I don't think that if games were more expensive there would be better crit. I actually think it would be more product review-ish. I think it would look more like it would go a lot further in the direction of something like whatever Foundry. What is that? Digital Foundry?
Digital Foundry.
Yeah, it would look more like that. It would look more like Gamers Nexus or like Linus Tech Tips type reviews of stuff, where it would get very technical and very like frames per second oriented.
Yeah.
But I do think, and it's kind of related to money adjacently, is if games were shorter, I think crit would be better. In general. Because when I think about the games that got the most attention and the most dialogue, I think about stuff that are these very bite-sized, contained experiences where it's a lot more authorial. I think there's like a direct correlation between length of game and what is being said in that game. Like if you take like Passage, Jason Rohrer, like that's like so much has been said about that game, and it's like a 2-minute game.
There was a story on NPR yesterday about Starfield, and like the whole spin of the story was about how big the story in Starfield was, or it ostensibly is. And it's like the biggest story. The story's so big. And it was like amazing that like there's this giant fucking game that could be saying a million different things, but the story is like the focus of this NPR piece. But also like, of course it is, because what statement can you make across an open world game where we watched like 5 minutes of it on the YouTube video a bit ago, and like you're staring at a rock mining it? Like there's it's so hard for something so big to say anything like cogently that can't just be extrapolated from like happenstance. That I think I agree with you, where it's like every giant open world game is just like a sort of RPG.
Well, and I think what really encourages the type of crit that we're talking about is when people are asking, what does this mean? What could it mean? Why would it mean that? And they actually research that they actually look into it. And they get, right now they're getting a lot of these like ending explained type videos. But even like that's slightly more a step in the right direction. But if you, and I find that there's a correlation in video games between video games that ask that force you to ask that question and length. And so I think one of the, the big hotbed of games crit was when walking sims were big and when there was a lot to say about them. And now that they're mostly gone, there's a lot less crit out there in general. I don't think it's, they're correlated, not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily the cause, but I do think there's like a correlation between those things. And I think that game length in general will say a lot more about how much people are seeking out games crit.
I think it's just hard too, because you can really kind of like autopilot what a game does in a way that has zero thought about what you're doing with the pieces. Like you can just make a platformer and like your dialogue is like saying, I want it to be Mario, but he jumps higher at every platform. And like you can make a whole game with just that thought. And not say anything. And I think that that's like maybe a weird thing. I don't know. I think we should end it. We're not going to solve it. Or maybe we did solve it.
There's one more question.
Oh, what's your thought on Music League? I have no idea what Music League is.
Okay, so I'll talk about this really quick. This is a special thing that's happening in the Superculture Discord, patreon.com/badend if you want to be a part of it. But it's this thing called Music League. Originally, I was invited to one by JJ Birch, previous guest on Bad End Podcast and a member of our community now. It's really cool. Actually, it's like a fantasy football league almost, but with music. And so every week there's a theme. So this week's theme is Gen Z. You post a song from a Gen Z artist or someone who's like really popular with Gen Z. And then there's 15 people who are participating in our music league. And at the end of the week, you get a playlist of all the songs that people have submitted. You can only submit one song per week. And then you get 10 votes and you get to allocate them to your favorite songs. And then you win or lose that week based on how many points that you got. And then like at the end of all the 10 weeks, whoever wins or whatever. So basically it's just a new playlist every week around a theme, which is really dope. So I'm loving that part of it because I'm discovering a lot of new music. We got some people who are submitting some really cool songs. If you're in the Bad End Discord and the Superculture Discord, you should check out the Music League channel because we're putting the playlists in there every week. And the playlists are really freaking good. So if you're looking for new music, it's a great way to discover new music around these themes. Like we had one that was 70s themed, like only songs from the 70s. That was really cool. A lot of stuff that I'd never heard of in there and really good stuff. People are getting pretty competitive about it, I will say. I contribute my song and then like I do not look at the points, because actually I did look at the points this week and my score was abysmal. I contributed a Blood Brothers song, knew it was gonna do terribly. It was the Cocteau category, which is songs where the lyrics make no sense, and it was just like a song I really like, but it's like super hardcore and chaotic, and it got like 3 votes or something like that. So R.I.P. to that one. But there's some great stuff, and maybe next season, if people want to participate, it's pretty fun. You get new playlists every week, and you can still listen to them even if you're not participating, which I highly recommend if you're looking for new music, because we got some great
Did you
folks.
ever do Learned League?
No, never heard of that.
It's a secret trivia club that's global. And that's all I'll say for this episode.
Oh, secret trivia league.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. All right. I'll
Play
give
us
you a wrap.
out, Josh.
All right, Kyle. For everyone listening, thanks so much. For people not listening, I guess I have nothing to say to you, but we are Bad End Podcast. We hope that you will rate us and review us on iTunes, and that you will check out our affiliates over at Superculture. We got Funland, Bullet Points, Heterotopias, Idea of Evil, the Berserk Podcast, Wrapped, and wait, am I missing something?
Funland?
I think I said Funland, but anyway, that's all. Superculture, patreon.com/badend. You can email us, badendpod@gmail.com. Yeah, Twitter, badendpodcast.
X.
I guess sort of Blue Sky. We're not on Blue Sky yet, but Blue Sky is kind of...
Maybe we'll never be on Blue Sky.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that turns out. But anyway, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. Later.
Bye, everybody.
End stream. Bye, stream people. Thanks for tuning in.